Really what we're trying to do, or what you should be trying to do, is take the angles that you think will sell your product the best and make them like very obvious. You don't need to be creative. You can just be like simple and blunt almost. We have 2 primary sale periods coming up: Labor Day in September, of course. And then in October, we have, I think it's called Amazon Prime Day, Big Deals Day or something. We can use those as sale creative testing grounds so we can learn what is our top sale creative before we go into Black Friday. Let's be honest, like the DTC space is more competitive than it's ever been. And if you can find how you can carve a path for yourself through a few niche angles, that's going to be your biggest chance at success, and especially long-term success.
It's All Killer No Filler. I'm Eric, and I am here with another milestone on the All Killer No Filler DTC podcast. We have Henry Banfield. Pilothouse, you're a senior content manager and media buyer, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I kind of started on the media buying side, and then I went all in on content for about a year, and now I'm back into media buying. So helping brands scale with what I love most, creative strategy, but also helping on the media buying front.
And that's what we're talking about today, is creative strategy and really putting creative strategy into practice in a proactive way. This kind of came about. We're actually going to be walking through a case study that Henry and Pilothouse produced recently. And you can, if you want to, you can follow along at pilothouse.co/clients-success/GrowOya. We'll put it in the show notes here. But we're going to be, you can either do that yourself as you listen, or you can hop on over to YouTube where we're going to be screen sharing this. But basically, it's a really great example filled with data and insights about how we helped this awesome brand called GrowOya. So Henry, I think you were introing a little bit to what you think about this and how it might help our audience. So I'll let you take over from here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that, I want people to take away from this is just creative strategy, creative testing. I think a lot of people don't maybe know exactly how to approach creative testing. And I think the biggest thing that I see, at least on the agency side, is brands come to us and, we ask them what their top angles are or things about their product. And they're always kind of pushing onto us what they think their customers want to hear, where actually you don't want to be telling your customers what they want to be hearing at all. You essentially want to find out, listen to them. And that would be like a Steve Jobs thing, but really listening to what they want and what matters most to them. So really in this case study, what we'll dive into is how you can let your customers tell you what means the most to them through a data-backed approach to creative testing. So yeah, that's really exciting to me and something I now bring to every account I hop on.
You were also mentioning what you see some brands doing wrong out there. What do you see like brands spending specifically into Meta right now? What do you see them doing wrong?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a, huge topic to unload, because I think there could be, depends on the scale of the brand. Are we 5 years down the road? Are we just starting out fresh? I think the biggest thing that I see that I would say people might be doing wrong is not knowing exactly what sells their product. They're trying to push these USPs, or they're trying to push their product first. And maybe, if they're just starting out, they just want to get to a 4 ROAS. So they spray some ads that they see are working from somebody else on Canva kind of thing.
Sticky notes.
Yeah, sticky notes. That's a good scrappy one. But yeah, I mean, really, it's just let's just think logically here. There's obviously our brand, and then there's our product. And how do we want to combine the two? How do we want to position them? What do we need to know about our customers to actually sell our product? And when you start to dive into those questions and pulling back to move forward, that's when you can start to really grow and overcome some big obstacles. Very
cool. All right. Why don't you pull up the screen share and start letting it rip?
Absolutely. Let me just grab it here. Cool. So yeah, without getting into the nitty gritty, because ultimately I want people to, take away how they could use these strategies for their own brand. So not being too specific here, we can dive into how I would approach an account and basically some of the things we were just talking about right there. So first up here, and also Eric, feel free to interrupt me or add any questions at any time. First up here, we have an angle test at Pilothouse. We call it the pilot test. You can call it whatever you want. But if you notice, these creatives really aren't too flashy, and honestly, they shouldn't be, in my opinion. They should be somewhat basic. But really what we're trying to do, or what you should be trying to do, is take the angles that you think will sell your product the best and make them like very obvious. You don't need to be creative. You can just be like simple and blunt almost. Like this one here on the right, it just says save time watering plants. It's a very simple, saves time, 70% less water use. Like this is like saving water. And then essentially we run them, if not to be too specific, but we do go ABO. So we get all the same amount of spend into each of these angles here. And from there, you can decide how much you want to put into it. But let's just say you put $100 into, each ad creative. It is kind of crazy what the difference you'll see in results. I know like right here, we just have the winning ad on the right. Let me go over, which was Water Made Easy. But yeah, I mean,
for those listening, let's just so people get an idea if they are listening. So scroll back to the left there, and you've got 5 ads basically that have the product front and center in a really like with a bland, nice, stylish background and a single worded phrase that you're testing which of these phrases the audience responds to. So we've got supports. This is a product called GrowOya, which is a underground, it makes watering easier. I don't want to spoil anything, but it supports a healthy garden, over 800 5-star reviews. That's one angle. 70% less water use, save time watering plants, and watering made easy. These are the 5 angles that we're kind of testing, putting budget through. And then what signals are you looking for? Purchases? Are we looking for clicks? What are we looking for?
Yeah, great question. So how, individuals actually want to structure it, I'll leave up to them. For me, I like to do this in a completely cold audience. So people who have never heard of our brand, people who have never interacted with us, like max exclusions, nobody's heard of us before when we run this test. And because of that, you're pretty much not going to get purchases, or most likely you will not get purchases at the start, at least. So I'm mostly looking at click metrics, click-through rate, cost per click, and I would say add to carts. And then if we do get some purchase activity, which sometimes we do on these tests, it's obviously like very exciting because you're starting to find what's converting cold, which is, typically when we run these tests, we don't see a 4 ROAS or anything like that. But the goal is to find learnings of how to position your product. And really, what you're doing here is you're letting, like if you see an ad that has double the click-through rate, 50% cheaper cost per click, and you're getting way more clicks coming through a single angle, or maybe your top 3 angles, you now know, like you're essentially letting your audience tell you what is most important to them. So if let's just say they're all clicking through the less water angle, you now know there's a big audience out there, or there's an audience that's really interested in saving water. And that's probably where you want to start to lean with your future ad creative.
And it can come to inform all your UGC. You get notes you give to influencers. It's sort of everything there. Quick question, the ad text across the top, that obviously it's all similar length text, but it all reflects the angle that's in the image, I assume, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's all angle related. And I try and keep the headlines. So what I do, like to be very specific, what I do on these is I try and go 3 to 5 words for the big headline. Then there's actually a supporting piece of like a supporting sentence on the ad creative itself. So if you see down here, like save time watering plants, below it says, instead of watering daily, water only once a week. And then from there, we actually do have ad copy that does also relate to each of the angles. So we're ensuring that each creative is like very specific to the angle we want to test.
I swear, I still want to see stop killing your plants and just target it at millennials and it'll slay. So what was the client's expectation coming into this test, and what actually won?
Yeah, actually super interesting that you say that, because when they came to us, they were very confident that keep in mind, they had some like bottlenecks, and that's kind of why they came to us. And creative typically is a bottleneck, and it's difficult to get creative fast sometimes. But it was that saving time would be the number one angle. And they actually, like, the Watering Made Easy was on the homepage, and their homepage was amazing. I was like, why don't we just like try that in as an angle? And that's what actually took over there. So their top angle, like originally concepted, was actually our second place. And then our winning ad was the Watering Made Easy.
What's the supporting text on Watering Made Easy?
Let me see if I can zoom in. Maintaining your garden has never been this easy.
Nice. Just double down on the easy.
Exactly.
I like it. People do like easy. Okay, so that works. So you get a higher click through rate, essentially, right? Is what you're looking for at this stage. A higher engagement rate on the ad for those two things. What's your next step?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where.
And how much would you have spent? How much would you have spent to figure that out?
Yeah, so it really depends on like the size of the brand.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing for this is not just ad spend as well, but you want a good time period. Like you don't want to just blast spend over 3 days and be like, those are our conclusions and this is it and we're done. Like we know everything we need to know. I typically like to run these for at least like 7 to 14 days. Like ideally 14 days, even at a little bit lower of a budget. But for me personally, it depends a little bit on your CPMs. Like you want to get to a number of impressions that you're happy with. But to give you like an answer, I would like to spend at least $100 into each angle, somewhere between 100 and 150. If you have more budget to play with, that's obviously amazing. But the learnings, you'll get from this will make up that budget in the future. I can almost guarantee it.
For sure. Nice.
So we kind of dove through those learnings already. So we can kind of keep going on here, which would be the next steps. Really, this is where like I have the most fun with it. And you kind of already foreshadowed this. But yeah, basically now that we know our top angles, and it doesn't just have to be like one cut and dry. It could be like the top 3 angles, and maybe you want to test more than 5. Like I'm starting one where we're actually about to test 8 angles against each other. So it's okay to, do your own thing or do what feels best to you. But from here, once you know what your audience wants to hear through the data, click-through rate, add to carts, etc., then you can start to explode that into all other creative. Now, keep in mind, we're not talking about like sale creative just yet. This is like evergreen creative. But what's really interesting is once we started to incorporate this into like all types of ads, we really started to see those top angles like pick up over and over. They built momentum and like got the ad account to a stronger place. But also like when we tested them against each other again, we still saw the same winners. So that angle test that you saw up above, it didn't necessarily like end right there. You can see like on the left here, we have a CGC creative. And what I did is I made a hook that was Watering Made Easy every single time. And then I would throw in other hooks as well to the CGC creators. So I'd be like, let's do Watering Made Easy. Maybe we'll do like Saves Water, or maybe just something totally new. And almost every single time we saw that Watering Made Easy won time and time again, like in multiple CGC tests.
That's cool.
And then even like in this comparison ad, which became a top performing ad for a very long time. If you're not running comparison ads, I also recommend trying that. But like this is the best garden watering solution. It strays a little bit, but really it goes back to that like make watering easy. Like this is like the easiest solution.
It instantly conceptualizes what you're trying to. It's a little bit hard, maybe in the third image there, the static, where it's like, it's this thing inside a pot of soil. You don't instantly recognize what that is, but everyone recognizes a hose and thinks they're a pain in the ass probably. And so I think that fourth one is super well designed. I love that.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. This is why I say like it's so important to be, situational and just like honestly rational, like think through your product and think through what matters the most. The biggest problem with on the team here is like we have a product that goes underground. So if we have a photo of it, it doesn't show something, and the results it really produces is like over time and really like a personal benefit. So in this comparison static, like I said, a big fan of them. I think the most common, we were talking about mistakes earlier. The most common mistakes I see with these are people always go like us against them or like us against competitors. Like here's our sock versus like another sock type of thing. But we're actually going against like the industry here or like a pain. Like we actually made a tangled hose after this where people always think of like, oh, I hate untangling my hose just just to water my garden kind of thing.
Oh, the kinks are the worst. They're just absolutely brutal. The other thing I love about that ad is it agitates really well. It gets too worried about keeping your garden watered during the summer. And I feel like as a plant owner, I'm constantly like, there's that meme just about like while you're drinking your 8th cup of coffee of the day and your plants are over there just like, it's like dying. So that emotion in the text probably works well as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we even, had fun with like throwing in emojis here later on, like life with Oya, life without Oya, like sad face, happy face kind of thing.
Nice.
I like playing around with those things once you like start to find a creative format that works.
And it also starts to look more branded too. Like with that winning ad, you're really starting to see that that beige background. You're starting to bring more of the brand through into the ad experience as well.
Absolutely. And then one more time for our audio listeners, like essentially, once you find those winning angles, the next step here is think of any ad format you could think of, like whether it's like a meme, a Q&A response from an Instagram organic or like a branded static or a product video, CGC, and start to think how you can incorporate those top angles because you can almost always do it, whether it's a CGC hook or just like turning it into something like a sticky note ad like we started this with. And this objective will go on into a few more things because we will get into, let's just see what's next. We can keep going, like sale creative will be a next big one. But those first 2 points, like where we're at now, would be building up that evergreen core, learning what our audience wants to hear and how do we just like honestly build killer ad creative. And I don't mean it needs to like look polished and look amazing. That's obviously great if it does. But really it's like, what's going to drive ongoing performance where we don't need to always be dependent on sale periods to just like drive up our revenue.
And when you're hitting with your sales stuff, you want all of your other emotional and, persuasive notes dialed in, which you're doing over your evergreen creative.
Absolutely. And ultimately, like we were talking about before this, but you want to be specific and you want to like, let's be honest, like the DTC space is more competitive than it's ever been like in the world today. Right. And if you can find like how you can carve a path for yourself through a few niche angles, that's going to be your biggest chance of success and especially long-term success.
For sure. Nice.
Cool. So yeah, moving on here. I just wanted to show like we did dive into sale creative. And this is obviously a huge topic. I don't know when we'll be posting this, but Q4 is like right around the corner here. So sale creative is going to be everything going into Black Friday. But I feel like I start to see Black Friday ads in like October and I start to get jealous. Like, am I missing it? Or not jealous, but like, I'm like, oh my God,
stressed.
It's already here.
Yeah.
Am I missing out?
FOMO.
Yeah, definitely not. But it's an exciting time of year for the DTC space. Absolutely. I think the biggest thing I want to focus on that like I see some brands maybe missing out on is, we have 2 primary sale periods coming up in the next 2 months. We have Labor Day we have Labor Day in September, of course. And then in October, we have Prime Day. It's like the second Prime Day. I think it's called Amazon Prime Day Big Deals Day or something labeled a little bit odd like that. But what I like to encourage brands to do is we can use this space, those sale periods. First of all, obviously sale periods are great, but when you tap into seasonal sale periods like this, you don't necessarily position your brand as a discount brand. It's not like, hey, we're just running sales all the time, right? It almost feels natural because so many other brands are running sale periods.
It's a cultural event.
Exactly. And honestly, when buying intent is so high, like when you have a beast like Amazon pushing like so many promos, it just makes sense to like tap in on that. And if you are running a promo, you'll probably reap some of the rewards with that for sure.
So in these sale creatives, you're making the sale the primary image and then building in the angles more into the ad text.
Yeah. I'll share on that in two seconds. But what I just want to say, so like basically with the Labor Day and the Prime Day periods, we can use those as sale creative testing grounds. So we can learn what is our top sale creative before we go into Black Friday. And ultimately, you're not going into Black Friday with like any net new creative. I mean, you can try some stuff on the side if you want, But knowing that you have like a good batch of creative that you have a ton of confidence in, it's like we ran 2 sales and these statics cranked every time. We're definitely going to use those on Black Friday. That would be my goal for every brand to approach Black Friday.
Nice.
But absolutely on these, I mean, obviously we're looking at, you know, time periods that were earlier in the year with the Mother's Day sale there. But you're absolutely right, where these are creatives that are focused very much on the max offer. So everything headline related is like, we have a sale, 15% off, like big and bold in creative ways. I do see this type of creative crank. I've seen it crank through Black Friday periods, and I've seen it crank on multiple accounts through multiple periods, but it might not be the best way to approach prospecting or new audiences, but a good way to cash in on engaged audiences already. And that's what you kind of mentioned a second ago there, Eric, where you kind of said, you know, you're going sale first and then supporting with the product. And we actually shifted to doing a lot more of that on this account. And that's how I think, you know, if you have like a landing page and somebody has no idea like who you are and they click through on an ad and it just says Black Friday sale, blah, 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 they're not even qualified on your product. They don't even know maybe what you sell, especially if it takes a bit to explain it. It's all situational, right? Like if it's a jewelry product, we don't need to do any explaining, and 15% off is probably just, or like your discount is probably going to sell the product if people see it and they're visually engaged, right? Because it's a visual product. Something that's like a humidifier with some sort of benefits, or something that takes a lot more explaining, like health benefits that are released over three months, or, you know, these more complex products. This is where you would want to do a bit more educating with the sale. So you can do things like have a big headline with your number one angle from the headline test, and then maybe you throw in a badge that just says like Black Friday sale on now, kind of like compounding the sale for the urgency, but then also still utilizing your top selling angles.
Nice. And so that Mother's Day, the last one, just really simple to the point. And the 15% is even small, is pretty small in that one, which is interesting. But again, that ad text, looking for the perfect Mother's Day gift, probably just nailed it. Interesting.
Yeah. And to be like fully transparent with you, I wouldn't look at this ad and be like,
no,
yeah, this is going to be our top selling ad for
it's
this.
Just got a picture of the bulge. It's just that bottom right picture is just like, look, here's the bottom of it. Like,
yeah.
It's like that's great. That's cool. That worked.
It might be hard to see, but like it's basically sweating in that bottom. It's trying to show like the water.
Show you the actual, how it actually works. Got it. The sweating bulge. Okay.
The sweating. Yeah, the close up. The last thing I'll say is it definitely was like the ad I honestly maybe had like the least confidence in, and that became our top, because I would always think like this 15% off headline is going to crank. And you're totally right. The 15% off in this winning ad is tiny. But that's why I think it's really important to use these sale periods like I just discussed of like Labor Day and Prime Day to really find out what works, and maybe remove your ego and let the data prove you wrong sometimes.
Do you test the different headlines with the different images? Because to me, that's looking at the ad text there. I feel like ad text is maybe even, I'd be interested to know where you think in terms of weighting the value of the ad text versus the image. I know it's totally going to depend, but in this case, like looking for the perfect Mother's Day gift at the end is like the perfect way to encapsulate and like speak to an exact customer in an exact moment. And so I feel like that might be a good reason why that one worked best as well.
Yeah. Sometimes there's mysteries to this game that we'll like never fully know the answers behind, unfortunately.
AI will figure it out eventually.
But what I do think is the most important is like, does our headline, like, because keep in mind, half these placements are going to be like stories, right? And
That's
reels,
true.
where they don't get as much ad copy. But I think the most important would be like relating the text itself to the visual itself. And, you know, these honestly maybe don't do the best job of it because it's just 15% off and then a comparison static. But over here, this like 15% off, we actually changed this into an Evergreen 70% less water use. and you can see like the waterfall effect. And we did that for Evergreen. So I was trying to get a lot more deliberate with like how the imagery and the creative, like the visual, relates to the ad copy itself.
Nice. We're coming up on half an hour here. I know we're about halfway through there's so much value on this case study here, but what are we talking about next?
Yeah, I'll keep it going. And honestly, I think it'll start to get a lot quicker. Basically, like I think the theme is with this one, we have split screens. Basically, the topic that we're talking about here is split screens, and more like comparison ads per se. Kind of like left and rights, basically like before and afters. Like your garden was dry and barren before, then like green and lush after. And you can see the top
with a
angle.
kinked hose. That's a great ad. That's just gives me anxiety looking at the left half of that image.
Yeah, and then coming back to our top angle from before, watering made easy. But honestly, like the biggest learning I could share here is leaning into just like what's working. So we saw, these comparison statics work really well, like a left and right, and it started to honestly surprise me because it was the first time I really saw them scale. So I just want to keep trying with like the left and right, and that would be like the iterative process. How can we continue to tap in on that? The other thing that was kind of funny is the comment section on our creatives were like, I'll just make one, I'll DIY one, I'll make one out of plastic bottles. So we kind of like leaned into that angle with like a DIY or Oya, then showed a plastic bottle, and people would have like text or like comment threads in the ad creative being like, I don't want microplastics in my garden, like almost like a bit of back and forth. So that was really interesting.
Microplastics, great thing to invoke in that case. Yeah, you don't want little plastic bottles in your food, although we all do.
It also just doesn't look too pretty. Like if you're really big on gardening. Yeah, moving forward, same kind of concept here. Like you're seeing that 70% less water use I just discussed come in here. And yeah, being a bit more like visual, right? Like these 3-panel grids, I feel like just compared to a single static, we just don't see what the product is or what it's doing. And you really start to understand, visually with a grid, how this looks. And then we're actually value stacking here. So putting 70% less water use with watering made easy, putting those top angles together in a way. And that's also a great tip. Like if it's like your CGC video, you can slam those top 3 angles as like a 3 reasons why into a CGC video. And then, yeah, last thing, and I think there's 2 more actually down below here. But this is what I was talking about earlier so we made these animations for the product. Probably one of my favorite creatives I've ever made, honestly. But this is what I meant earlier to you when I said we're testing the same angles again here. So we actually went product name on the far left. So we just have the Oya watering pot. In the middle, we have 70% less water use, which was from that original angle test. And then again, watering made easy from that original angle test. And this is where you start to see like the repetition of the data, just proving out that original angle winning. So when we ran all 4 of these, there was actually one more, which was probably saves time. And when we ran all 4, all the data pointed right back to this watering made easy one.
Nice. Cool looking animation. What did it was 22 seconds. Did it sort of explain the whole product? And was it someone on our team that made that?
Yeah. So I'll humbly brag about this one, but I actually worked with our graphic. This is like a multi-part creative build because I worked with we essentially built these from scratch. So I worked with one of our graphic designers and we made like PSD, like Photoshop templates. And from there, we had one of our best video editors hop in After Effects and like animate and add sound design to all of this. And basically, visually to describe it, you see the product here and you can kind of see the plants in the corners, but it essentially drops underground. It gets watered, like the cap comes off and it gets watered. And then the plants like grow up along the sides. And while that's happening, text is coming up describing what the product does or like how it works. And within 22 seconds, it was the only way I could fully describe what this product is, how it works, and how it could benefit you. And that's why I think some of these products that are not, as visual, it takes that little bit of creative edge and pairing them with your top angles to really get across the message of like what a product is and how it can make your life easier essentially. And I will say this ad cranked. Like this was by far our top ad for that scale period in the spring there.
That's awesome. I have made a lot of animated explainers for like different SaaS businesses and stuff in the past, and it's always a fun process of storyboarding and then seeing it come to life. If you don't have a video editor and an animator, it's something that's maybe harder for smaller brands to try. But you gotta, I think, especially if you've got a product that needs some explaining, it's a must do.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, if you just like take a cold whim at it, it might not work. But we proved this out by this point, right? Like we were pretty confident that the watering made easy was a really great angle. We thought that would perform again. And we started to know like what mattered. And then we combined that into our animation and we gave it a shot. And it was really exciting to see this one pop off for sure. The very last one down here is content creator generated content. There we go. And honestly, like without rambling too much or anything like that, the same old story was here. So basically everything you saw up above, even that like DIY creative that we tried that in CGC. We even tried getting sarcastic, like why I regret buying my Oya watering pot. And we almost turned them into value stackers. So basically everything the CGC like team said, the content creators, was all relating back to those top angles. It saves you water, saves you time, and makes your life easier. And when we made that water made easier hook, every single time, like on all three of these that you're looking at, it cranked every single time.
Amazing. Angle testing. It's funny. It was it's probably the second or third podcast we ever did in March 2020, where we talked about the pilot test and just like how essential it is to really understand the language that your customers use, the way they think about your product, the way they want it. And it's amazing to see 4 years down the road. And I think we were 17 employees, I think when I first started, and we're up over 180 team members now. And we're still preaching the same gospel and it's still working. The last point, and I think it would maybe be a whole other episode, but you mentioned landing page. That's the other gospel we preach on the podcast all the time. I imagine that you have built a landing page for this as well, where you're actually really using the same angle science on the landing page.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you totally nailed it. So once we found, I call them value stackers. That's a Kyle term. But basically, you do this angle test and you now have your top 3 angles or whatever it may be. If you stack those values together, you're probably going to find the most success. And basically, I built out a couple different landing pages that were value stacking landing pages. So the hero is our top angle. The second supporting, like as soon as they scroll, they're seeing the second angle. The third would be the third angle. I think the one thing I'll add in for like the gardening community specifically is how it works is really important to them, because gardeners, I mean, I'm not bashing anybody here, but like you plant your plants and then you like watch them. But I think you're like always engaged, like how can you grow better? How can you grow more? Or like they're curious to learn more, and it's a really engaged community, which is amazing. And it's a great community that I learned about. So yeah, that the like how to, like if they're learning something, I feel like they're actually getting value. Even if they don't purchase, they still want to like learn something about gardening. So incorporating that was important. And that's why I say it's all situational, and you gotta know your audience and learn those things through testing and reading the comment section, etc. But yeah, the angle test is like the foundation of it all, right? If you can start to get data behind that, you start to learn what works for you and what sells your product. You're probably going to be in a good position to start moving forward with new creative and landing pages.
Without feeling like you're like in this, I like this. It's this iterative process where you stack your learnings. You're building something. I feel like a lot of people spend money into a void sometimes, or they're doing it in a sort of non-systematic way where they're not able to stack their learnings in a way that gets them to the ROAS numbers they need to get to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one cautionary tale I'd put on this is like it does take time, right? Like everything we looked at was like a 3 to 4 month period. And if we're talking about Q4 now, like this would begin, today. And like I said, maybe it takes a week or 2 weeks to get those angle test creatives, and then you have to run them for 14 days. That's a month already. And then what are the next steps? And you have to test this creative, and it takes time. But I think the the cost of time and putting in that effort is definitely worth the reward. And yeah, learning those angles is just like the most important. Like, listen to your audience. And like I said, there's multiple ways to approach this. Like, I have, a health product right now. And first we're going to do an angle test of like, here are the health benefits, because we need to figure out what health benefits matter the most to our audience. But then there's competitors and there's our product, right? So now we need to figure out, how do we differentiate ourselves from the competitors? So we're going to run 2 angle tests for them, where we do one all about health benefits and then product benefits, or USPs. And then we can start to stack those all together to ultimately be like, here's the health benefits and here's why you need this product. And here's why you need to buy from us, because we're the leader in this industry.
So out there, just do this, or come work with Pilothouse, where you get to work with content managers that are this engaged with your brand, which I think it's pretty cool. Like, just to see your excitement on this project, and especially to see it all in this nicely laid out case study that we'll link in the show notes, is pretty cool, man. Your passion is infectious. So you'll have to come on the podcast again. I think I've confused that you haven't been on the podcast, although I'm going to have to take a look and see, because you're on our socials so much. If you might recognize Henry if you're a fan of D2C, because you've had a few of our breakthrough memes and awesome skits on socials. So thanks for those as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, big on the organic. Hopefully to do more for you guys soon. But yeah, first podcast ever. Thanks for having me. Nice,
man. We got to get you some we're going to be doing some man on the street interviews at conferences. We're going to have to start sending you.
Oh, I would love that. I'm all for that.
Like, what's your hot take on the subway in New York or something? That would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice, man. Well, great talking to you again, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're not getting the D2C newsletter, you can subscribe for free at directtoconsumer.co. And if you want to learn more about Pilothouse's all-killer, no-filler services, take off to pilothouse.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.